6-year-old Ethan vanished on stage during a magic show, right in front of his sister's eyes. No trace, no explanation, no return. 11 years have passed. Everyone else moved on, but Clara never did, until she saw him. Before we dive in, please like this video and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from. And the folding chairs squeaked on the scuffed gymnasium floor, their metal legs grinding as children shifted with excitement. Paper streamers clung lazily to the ceiling beams, and the smell of popcorn lingered from the concession stand at the back. It was just another Saturday in the sleepy town of Darnell Falls, Illinois, until it wasn't. 14-year-old Clara Carter sat near the front, arms crossed tightly over her chest. She'd only come to appease her mom, who insisted she watch over Ethan while she helped with ticket sales. Clara's little brother, Ethan, sat on the edge of his seat, legs too short to reach the floor, a paper magician's hat tilted over his ears. The lights dimmed. The chatter dissolved into hush. A puff of artificial smoke erupted at center stage. And now, boomed a voice from behind the curtain. Prepare yourselves for a journey beyond. Maxim the Mystifier emerged in a swirl of purple velvet, his cloak billowing, eyes gleaming under the stage lights. He was tall, theatrical, with a voice like silk that snaked around the room. Clara didn't like him. Something about his smile didn't reach his eyes. The show began simply enough. Card tricks, floating scarves, the classic rabbit in the hat. The kids were enthralled, their laughter echoing through the community center's walls. Then came the final illusion. For this, Maxim declared, I'll need a brave volunteer. Clara's breath caught as she saw Ethan's small hand shoot into the air. You there, the magician said, pointing, the young adventurer in the red hoodie. Clara's hand clamped her knee so tightly her nails left crescent marks. Ethan beamed and bounded to the stage. Maxim led him to a tall, antique cabinet, a gaudy thing with peeling gold paint and mirrored panels, the kind you see in dusty corners of old theaters. Once inside, Maxim intoned, Our young friend will disappear and reappear moments later. Clara leaned forward. Maxim opened the door. Ethan stepped in, waving proudly at the crowd before the door swung shut. The magician tapped the cabinet once, twice. He opened the door. Empty. A beat passed. Then two. Then the applause started hesitantly, the adults chuckling, the kids squealing. But then Maxim's smile faltered. He tapped again. Opened again. Still empty. Clara stood, her chest tightening. Where's Ethan? The mood shifted like a gust through dry leaves. Maxim stammered. Just a moment, folks, perhaps he... Clara was already climbing on stage. Ethan, she screamed, yanking open the cabinet herself. Where is he? Behind the curtain, the stagehand scrambled. Lights flickered. Panic spilled into the audience. Someone called 911. The cabinet was dismantled. No trapdoors. No hidden compartments. Just hollow echoes. An hour later, the building was surrounded by squad cars. Maxim was handcuffed and led away, silent and shaking. Clara sat on the edge of the stage, Ethan's paper magician hat in her lap, crushed between her hands. She stared at the empty cabinet, its door still ajar like a mouth caught mid-gasp. The trick was over, but Ethan never came back. The monitor's glow lit up Clara's face in the otherwise dark apartment. A sequence of frames rolled by in slow motion. A child's birthday party. Balloons. Cake. A laughing toddler. Her cursor hovered on a frame longer than she needed to. She zoomed in on the child's face. Blonde hair. Blue eyes. About 6 years old. She blinked hard and forced herself to press play. Outside her window, the distant hum of Chicago traffic floated upward. But inside, the room was silent, save for the ticking of the analog clock she never bothered to take down. Clara Carter, 25, lived among ghosts. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, cutting clips and balancing audio levels with practiced ease. Freelance video editing was solitary work, exactly how she liked it. No small talk, no coworkers, just her, a timeline, and an endless stream of other people's memories. Memories she could control, unlike her own. On the shelf above her desk sat a shoebox covered in worn red wrapping paper. Inside, a faded photograph of Ethan in his red hoodie, a chipped Hot Wheels car, and a crumpled flyer for Maxim the Mystifier's last show. Clara didn't open the box anymore. She didn't have to. She knew its contents by heart. She hadn't spoken to her parents in over a year. Not since their last phone call, where her mother's voice, tired and brittle, said, "We need to let go, Clara. He's gone." Clara had hung up without replying. They'd moved to Florida, sold a house, boxed up every trace of Ethan, like he was some phase they'd all grown out of. But Clara couldn't forget. Wouldn't forget. Her therapist had called it persistent trauma fixation, a clinical name for something far messier. Grief warped her relationships. She didn't date, didn't do brunch. When friends had tried to pull her back into the world, they were met with polite walls and excuses. Only one person remained close, her roommate, Samantha. They weren't friends in the traditional sense, more like co-survivors of adulthood. Samantha respected boundaries, brought home coffee, and only asked questions when Clara seemed like she needed someone to. Tonight, she didn't. Clara saved the project file and leaned back, exhaustion pooling in her spine. She looked up at the ceiling. A stain near the light fixture resembled a bird in flight. For a moment, she remembered Ethan running through the sprinkler in the backyard, arms stretched wide like wings, yelling, "I'm flying. Watch me, Clara." Her throat closed. She stood abruptly and moved to the kitchen, mechanically pouring cereal into a chipped bowl. Midnight rituals were her lifeline. On the small TV propped by the fridge, a late-night talk show droned on. She wasn't paying attention until the host introduced a guest. Our next illusionist has taken Europe by storm, now back in the States for his first televised tour. Give it up for Lucian Knight. Clara looked up, spoon frozen halfway to her mouth. A tall man in a dark velvet jacket stepped on stage. Behind him, a boy, maybe 17, wheeled out a table of props. The boy's posture, the tilt of his head, the cautious glance toward the camera. Clara's heart stuttered. She dropped the spoon. It clattered against the linoleum. Her eyes narrowed, pulse pounding as the boy on screen turned slightly toward the lens, just enough to show a profile she hadn't seen in 11 years, but would know anywhere. She whispered his name before she realized it. Ethan. Clara didn't sleep that night. The image haunted her. That single frame where the boy in black, standing behind Lucian Knight, turned just enough for the camera to catch his profile. It lasted less than a second, but something inside her screamed. The jawline, the curve of his brow, the tilt of his nose. He looked like Ethan, not the 6-year-old in the red hoodie, but an older version, as if time had preserved him somewhere out of reach, then suddenly dropped him back into her world. She'd stared at the footage until her eyes burned. By 3 a.m., she had the original file and loaded into her editing suite. She clipped the moment, exported the boy's face as stills, and laid them side by side with every childhood photo she could scan from her dusty archives. First grade, birthday parties, beach trips. Then she booted up the software. FaceMatch Pro wasn't perfect, but it was cutting edge. Law enforcement used it. Clara had acquired a trial license last year while working on a documentary for a local journalist. Now she was using it for something else entirely, something no one would believe. She fed the childhood photos into the program first, one by one, labeling them Ethan Carter, age 6. Then she dragged in the still of the assistant from the magic show. Processing. 1%, 5%, 18%. Clara paced the room, chewing at the edge of her thumb, nerves fraying like wire. The computer's fan whirred louder, screen flickering gently in the dark. Finally, the results appeared. Match confidence, 85.4%. She froze. 85%. It wasn't conclusive, not in legal terms, but it wasn't nothing either. The margin of error could be chalked up to aging, poor lighting, or even video compression. And yet, it was enough. Clara exhaled sharply, then sat down, gripping the edge of her desk. Her rational mind tried to speak up. It could be coincidence. Face structure overlaps. A look-alike. That's all. But her gut had its own language, one that hummed deep in her chest. The boy's eyes had looked nervous, haunted, even, just like hers. She played the clip again, watching the magician take center stage, all charisma and charm, while the assistant stayed in the background. He never smiled. He avoided the camera. At one point, he glanced off stage, as if looking for an escape. That glance is what gutted her. Samantha, she said to her roommate, I need your help. Right now. There was a pause. Then, it's 2:30 in the morning. I think I found Ethan. Another pause. You what? I'm sending you a link. I need a second opinion before I lose my mind. A few minutes later, Samantha appeared in the hallway, wrapped in a blanket like a cloak, eyes squinting at Clara's laptop screen. After 3 replays, she leaned back. It's uncanny. But it's been 11 years, Clara. Are you sure you're not? Clara didn't respond. She zoomed in on the boy's profile again. A faint scar was visible above his right eyebrow. Ethan had fallen off his bike when he was 5. Same spot. Same angle. Samantha's voice was quieter now. You think it's really him? Clara nodded once. I need to find out who this magician is. Where he's performing next. What his assistant's real name is. Samantha looked at her like she wanted to object, but didn't. Instead, she simply asked, Where do we start? Clara's answer was immediate. Everywhere. The sun hadn't even risen when Clara fired off her first email. To the producers of the Lucy and Knight Illusion Hour, the late-night special that had aired just hours earlier. Her message was blunt, borderline desperate. Subject: urgent inquiry regarding assistant in Lucy and Knight broadcast. Hello. I am seeking immediate information about the assistant featured in last night's program. I have reason to believe he may be my brother, who disappeared under highly publicized circumstances over a decade ago. Please contact me as soon as possible. Clara Carter. She included links to old news clippings, a scanned photo of Ethan, her phone number. She even signed with a trembling, thank you. She stared at the screen long after hitting send. Hope and panic tangled in her chest like barbed wire. By noon, she received the response. Hi Clara. We appreciate your viewership and concern. Unfortunately, we cannot provide any personal or employment information about individuals appearing on our broadcast. Thank you. The production team. Cold. Sanitized. Corporate. Clara read it 3 times before letting the laptop fall shut. She sat motionless, fists clenched, pulse hammering in her ears. Samantha appeared in the doorway, holding 2 coffees. They say anything useful? Clara shook her head. Then we dig ourselves, Samantha said, handing her the drink. Starting with Lucy and Knight. She pulled her own laptop onto the couch and opened 3 browser windows in a blur of muscle memory. According to press releases, Lucian's been touring internationally for 6 years. Mostly private shows and upscale events. Monte Carlo, Dubai, Berlin. Clara leaned in. Find his real name. Samantha raised a brow. You don't want to start with the assistant? No, Clara said. Lucian controls the spotlight. He decides who stays in the dark. Samantha typed faster. Okay, registered business filings list his legal name as Lucas Neat. Born in Dresden, Germany. Changed his name legally in 2014. Travel visas. Here we go. Clara's phone rang. Her mother. She let it ring once. Twice. Then answered. Clara. Her mother's voice was hesitant. Frightened. I saw your post on that missing persons forum. Someone forwarded it to me. Are you doing this again? Clara turned away from Samantha. I think I saw Ethan on TV last night. There was a silence, so thick it felt like drowning. Clara, her mother finally whispered. I know you miss him. I do too. But you have to stop reopening this wound. What if he's alive? You said that 6 years ago. And 4. And 2. At some point, you have to let him go. Clara's voice cracked like thin ice. I can't. Because I was there. I watched him disappear. A pause. Then her mother said softly, and you've been disappearing ever since. The call ended before Clara could respond. She stared at the phone until Samantha gently pried it from her hand. Look, Sam said, voice level. Lucian's booked to perform in Milwaukee this weekend. Public show. Theater listings confirm it. Clara's breath caught. That's only 2 hours away. Yup. And you'll need a press pass to get backstage. But lucky for you, I still have a college ID and access to some design software. Clara tried to focus, but the walls of the apartment felt like they were breathing, pressing in, then pulling back. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. At some point, you have to let him go. But what if that point was never? She opened the cabinet above her desk and pulled out the shoebox. Red wrapping paper, the flyer, the toy car. She added a USB drive with the assistant's footage to the box and sealed it again. The Milwaukee show was in 3 days. Clara couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Time had become elastic, stretching unbearably across hours of research, then snapping back into vivid, relentless memories. On a hunch, she pulled out one last box from the back of her closet, an old, dented hard drive the size of a paperback novel. It had belonged to her dad, salvaged from a dusty cabinet before the family house was sold. She had never gotten around to checking it. Until now. Samantha helped her boot it up, the screen filled with folders named in generic strings. Clara's breath hitched as she clicked through. There he was. Ethan. Not the spectral maybe boy on a stage, but Ethan Carter, age 6, toothy grin, grass-stained jeans, clutching his little camcorder like it was treasure. He had loved filming things, even if they were out of focus. Bugs. Leaves. Their cat. Clara herself, in her awkward early-teen scowl, yelling at him to stop filming me already, you weirdo. She clicked on a clip labeled Self-Magic. Static. Then shaky footage of Ethan sitting cross-legged on the bedroom floor. Okay, he said to the camera, grinning. I'm going to show you a trick. But first, guess what? He leaned in conspiratorially. I met a real magician. Not like on TV. He's got a suitcase with secret compartments and a ring with a stone that glows in the dark. Clara froze. This was before Maxim's show. Days before. Ethan looked off camera, then back. He said he's going to teach me a real disappearing trick. But I'm not supposed to tell. He said if I do, the magic won't work. But I told him I could tell you, Clara. You don't count. Clara's breath shook. He has this owl tattoo. Ethan whispered, voice low like it was a spell. On his hand. Right here. He mimed the curve over his wrist. When he waves it, it's like the owl's blinking. Clara rewound. Played it again. He has this owl tattoo. She didn't remember this video. Didn't remember Ethan mentioning anyone before Maxim's show. Was this magician someone else? A handler? A recruiter? She hit pause and took a screenshot of Ethan's hand gesture. Sam leaned over. Creepy. It's a symbol, Clara whispered. I know it means something. I just don't know what yet. She clicked through more videos, all snippets. One showed Ethan giggling at a park. Another featured his bedroom, where a sticker-covered toy chest sat under the window. And there, in the background, a shadow briefly passed the glass. Too tall to be a child. Too fast to be nothing. Clara scrubbed back and froze the frame. The silhouette's hand, pressed briefly to the window pane, bore something dark and circular. A tattoo? An owl? Her heart jackhammered. Outside, sirens echoed, pulling her briefly back into the present. She realized her fingers were trembling. How did we miss this? She whispered. Sam didn't answer. She didn't need to. Clara had been 14. Her parents had been devastated. No one had scoured hours of childhood footage. Not back then. They were too busy searching woods, calling hospitals, plastering Ethan's face on telephone poles. This footage was background noise to grief. And now it was a map. Clara opened her notebook and drew a simple owl. Eyes wide, wings curled inward. She circled it in red. From now on, she said, voice low, if we see this symbol anywhere, we follow it. The Orpheum Theater in Milwaukee had been restored with reverent detail. Polished brass railings, red velvet seats, the air tinged with the faint scent of old wood and perfume. It was the kind of place that made magic feel real, if only for a while. Clara sat in row F, center left. She kept her head down, baseball cap tugged low, phone in her lap, recording video in silent mode. Samantha sat 2 rows behind, inconspicuous with a scarf and clipboard. Her custom press badge had gotten them both through the door. On stage, Lucy and Knight basked in the spotlight. Ladies and gentlemen, he purred, his accent a melting pot of Europe and theater. Tonight, we tempt the impossible. He wore black, always black, with silver embroidery on his cuffs. But Clara's eyes weren't on Lucien. They were on the boy behind him. The assistant. 17, maybe 18. Lean, cautious, well-rehearsed. He moved with the quiet precision of someone used to disappearing. Not in magic, but in life. His name, according to the program, Noah Ever. No last name. No origin. No social trail. Samantha had tried digging. Came up empty. Clara's heart thudded in her ribs like it wanted out. He looked older, of course. Stronger jaw, longer limbs. But the eyes, they were Ethan's. The show unfolded around her. Sleights of hand, levitating roses, vanishing scarves. Lucien was good. Too good. But every trick felt like a mockery, a reenactment of the trauma Clara carried like a second skin. Then came the cabinet. The same trick. Not identical. This one was sleeker, taller, with mirrors on all sides. But Clara's breath hitched as Lucien opened the door and gestured for Noah. "Let's test the boundaries between presence and absence," Lucien said, smiling. Noah stepped in. Clara couldn't breathe. Lucien tapped the cabinet, theatrically spun it, opened the mirror doors. Empty. Applause. Except from Clara. She watched Lucien's expression, every micro-movement, every flicker of control behind his charming facade. And something was wrong. Not with the trick. With him. He didn't look proud. He looked watchful, like a man guarding something more than just secrets. When the curtain fell, Clara stood and moved quickly. Samantha followed. "Stage exits on the west side," Sam whispered, checking her phone. "We got maybe 3 minutes before they're packed up." They slipped past ushers, ducked behind a row of double doors, and emerged into the alley. The loading bay glowed under a harsh sodium light. A black van idled. There he was. Noah, in a hoodie now, wheeling a trunk into the van, alone. Clara stepped forward, hard her throat. "Noah," she called. He froze, turned slowly. Their eyes met, and time collapsed. Recognition flickered across his face, fast, like a blink, before he looked past her, then hurried the trunk into the van. "Wait, please." She moved closer, hands outstretched. But Lucien appeared from the shadows. Tall, cold, smiling faintly. "I'm sorry," he said, voice like velvet over steel. "My assistant doesn't do meet and greets." Noah kept his eyes down, slipping into the passenger seat as the van doors slammed. Lucien gave Clara a long look, then disappeared into the driver's seat. The van pulled away. Clara stood in the alley, fists shaking. "That was him," she whispered. Samantha exhaled slowly beside her. "I know." Detective Ray Salgado lived in a modest duplex on the edge of Evanston. Lawn overgrown, porch light always flickering, mailbox duct-taped shut at the top. Retirement didn't suit him, not really. His spine was curved now, and his hands shook when he drank coffee, but his eyes? Still sharp, still scanning. Clara hadn't seen him since the funeral for the investigation, the day the police department officially closed Ethan's case due to lack of actionable leads. Salgado hadn't attended that press conference. He'd been inside the precinct, alone in his office, drinking black coffee from a thermos with no label. Now, as Clara stood on his front step, she hesitated before knocking. The door opened before she could. "You really think I wouldn't recognize those footsteps?" Salgado grunted. "You always stomped like you were mad at the ground." Clara blinked. I didn't know if you'd even talk to me. I'm not a priest. You want confession? Go to St. Dominic's. But if this is about your brother, come in." The interior hadn't changed in a decade. Same corduroy recliner. Same half-finished model train table collecting dust. Salgado gestured to the couch and shuffled into the kitchen, returning with 2 chipped mugs. "I still think about him," he said without preamble. "I was a father once. Lost my son to leukemia. Different kind of vanishing, but it makes you keep your eyes open, just in case." Clara nodded, unsure how to respond. So she pulled out her laptop. "Just watch," she said, voice tight. She played the clip, the late-night show footage, the stills, the frame-by-frame analysis. Then she showed him the childhood videos, including the one with the owl tattoo mentioned. Salgado watched silently, leaning forward, elbows on knees. When it ended, he sat back, rubbing his jaw with a slow breath. "I'll be honest," he said. "When you called, I thought you were still stuck. Not seeing clearly." "I'm seeing clearly," Clara replied. "For the first time in years." He gave her a long look. "I never believed Maxim worked alone. He didn't seem like a planner. More like a performer. Someone else built that cabinet. Someone else orchestrated what came after. But I never had proof." Clara opened her notebook, flipped to the owl symbol she'd drawn. "Do you remember this?" Salgado squinted, then frowned. "I saw something like that once. Tattoo. One of Maxim's old assistants, teenage girl, ran off halfway through the tour in '09. Came back to file a harassment complaint. Dropped it 2 days later. Said she was pressured. Do you still have her name?" Salgado nodded slowly. Might. In the boxes in my garage. My ex-wife calls it hoarding. I call it unfinished business. He stood up with a groan, disappearing into the dim hallway. Clara sat there, heart hammering. He returned 15 minutes later with a battered file folder labeled M. Mystifier, Alt Theory. Inside, photos, timelines, half-erased notes. A name circled in red, Jamie Lawrence. A note beneath it, Al tattoo, left hand. Clara's hands trembled. There's more, Salgado said. Rumors started floating back then. Kids disappearing at shows. Not often. Not enough for the feds to move. But enough that it made you wonder if Maxim was part of something bigger. Clara's mouth went dry. A network? She asked. Could be, Salgado muttered. Trafficking, maybe. Or blackmail. The kind of rabbit hole that swallows people. His eyes found hers again, tired, but not without fire. Tell me everything you found. I may be old, but I've still got a few punches left. Back in Chicago, Clara sat beside Samantha in their dim apartment, the whir of her roommate's laptop fan growing louder with each window she opened. Outside, rain streaked the glass in vertical lines. Inside, the room buzzed with anxious purpose. Let's see what Mr. Knight doesn't want anyone to find, Samantha muttered, typing commands like an orchestra conductor. She'd hacked into harder systems before. University records, event ticketing software, even a petty revenge job involving a cheating ex and a corrupted dating profile. But this was different. This was Ethan. Clara stared at the screen as Samantha navigated through layers of Lucien's digital presence. His public website was polished and generic. Glowing testimonials, world tour highlights, a PR-crafted biography that told him nothing. But his tour management system? Less guarded. People always reuse passwords, Sam said, slipping into the back end with the help of a forgotten employee login posted on a freelance crew forum. And voila, dozens of performances listed by city, date, and crew assignments. Clara scrolled until she saw Milwaukee, Orpheum Theater. Under crew assistance, she saw the name. No ever. No address. No date of birth. Check earlier dates, Clara said. Sam searched backwards. Detroit, Montreal, Reykjavik. Noah ever appeared again and again. Not a single record of employment, she murmured. No tax ID. Nothing before 2017. Clara's heart skipped. That would make him what? 9 years old when the trail begins. Samantha didn't respond. She was already digging into Lucien's international filings. In a folder buried under client contracts and venue rider agreements, she stopped. Wait. Here. A scanned document. A translated guardianship agreement filed in Romania. Guardianship transfer. Lucas Neat, minor. Evan Myers, DOB unknown. EST age 9. E. Myers, Clara whispered. Her hands tightened into fists. Evan. Ethan. It's just one letter off. She leaned closer to the screen, squinting. At the bottom of the page was a signature in childish scrawl. Crooked. Forced. Like someone who hadn't signed their own name in years. Samantha looked up. He renamed him. No records before age 9, Clara said. New identity, new paper trail. No family ties. Sam hesitated. Clara, this was filed legally. Internationally. You're not going to be able to walk into a courtroom with this and demand answers. This kind of thing, it means there were people helping him. People with reach. Clara looked down at the printed page in her lap. The fake name. The erasure of her brother. I don't care. But how far are you willing to go? Sam asked quietly. Because this is hacking. This is evidence you can't legally use. And if you confront Lucien or Ethan directly, if you push too hard, it could backfire. He could disappear again. Clara stared at the screen. Her own reflection hovered faintly in the glass. Eyes hollow, jaw clenched. I'd rather risk everything, she said, than do nothing. A message pinged on Sam's laptop. An old Reddit forum post flagged by her web scraper, dated 3 years ago, under a throwaway account. Assistant at a magic show in Vienna looks scared. Doesn't speak. Tattoo guy never lets him out of sight. Might be nothing. Just seemed wrong. Attached was a photo. Blurry. But unmistakable. Noah. Clara sat back. This has been happening for years. We just weren't looking in the right places. Samantha closed the laptop softly. What's the plan now? Clara's voice was steady, her hands no longer shaking. We don't let him vanish again. The trick, Clara knew, was not to look desperate. She stood in the hallway of the Ambassador Hotel in St. Paul, Minnesota, clutching a press badge that said Clara Newton, Stage and Light magazine. Samantha had printed it on glossy cardstock and laminated it just enough to look official. The magazine didn't exist, but the email address she'd created, along with a convincing cover letter, had been enough to get her 5 minutes backstage with Lucy and Knight. "You're on the list," the handler at the door said, skimming his clipboard. "Room 603. Don't touch the props." The hallway stretched on like a wind tunnel, its patterned carpet muted beneath her boots. Clara's palms were damp. Every step felt like walking a tightrope above a decade's worth of grief. When the door opened, Lucy and Knight was pouring tea into a delicate ceramic cup, his dark suit immaculate. He glanced up, and for a moment, the mask slipped, recognition flashing too quickly to read. "Ah, the journalist," he said, smile thin. "I was told this would be a phone interview." "I prefer face-to-face," Clara replied smoothly, extending a hand. "Stories are about atmosphere." Lucian didn't shake her hand. He gestured to a velvet chair across from his, then asked quickly. Clara sat, pulling out a notebook and recorder. She clicked it on. "You've performed across 3 continents. What's changed the most about your art over the years?" Lucian raised an eyebrow. "The audience. They want more now. Faster illusions. Grander lies. And your team? Do you work with the same assistants each tour?" A pause. "Noah is talented," Clara said, trying to sound casual. "Does he speak often?" Lucian's smile cooled. "He speaks when necessary. Magic isn't about words. It's about control." A knock on the door interrupted them. Lucian rose and opened it. And there he was. Noah. He entered with downcast eyes, carrying a trunk of coiled wire and cloth. His presence changed the air, like a shadow drawn into human form. Clara looked up slowly, heart thundering. "Noah," Lucian said. "Meet our journalist guest." Noah turned, briefly, eyes flicking to her face. No recognition. No reaction. Clara smiled gently. "You're a hard one to find." Lucian moved to intercept. "He's not part of the interview." But Clara didn't look away. She stepped forward, voice soft. "Red trucks go fastest." Noah blinked. It was like watching something crack under glass. His shoulders twitched. His eyes locked on hers, confused, wary. "What did you say?" he whispered. Lucian froze. Clara took a step closer, her voice shaking. "It's what you said when you raced Matchbox cars. Remember? You always picked the red one. Said it was fastest. Every time." Noah didn't move. But his hand, the one at his side, trembled. Lucian placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder. "That's enough," he said, voice tight. "He has work to do." Clara backed away, notebook clutched against her chest, pulse racing. "Of course. Thank you both." She left the room, her legs barely holding her up. When she rounded the corner, she leaned against the wall and exhaled. Samantha was already texting. "Anything?" Clara replied. "I think he knows. I think it's him." Clara didn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Noah's face, the flicker in his eyes when she said the phrase. "Red trucks go fastest." It wasn't just a memory. It was a fracture in the wall that had been built around her brother's identity. But the victory was short-lived. At 2:11 a.m., her phone vibrated on the nightstand. Unknown number. One message. "Stop digging. Some illusions should stay closed." Clara stared at the screen, adrenaline shooting through her veins. She sat up, heart hammering, quickly screenshotting the message. She tried calling the number back. Disconnected. She checked the IP on her messaging app. Masked. Encrypted. Whoever sent it knew what they were doing. She texted Samantha and Salgado the message, then got up, locking every window and door. By the time sunlight slipped between the blinds, Clara hadn't moved from her desk. Her phone buzzed again. Salgado. She answered on the first ring. "Pack a bag," he said. "You're coming to Evanston. Now." Clara arrived at Salgado's with bloodshot eyes and the weight of a decade pressing on her shoulders. The retired detective handed her a mug of coffee without speaking, then led her to the garage. Laid out across the foldable table was a web of receipts, notarized forms, and bank transfer printouts. "I've been working," he said. "Maxim the Mystifier may be dead, but his money isn't." Clara scanned the papers. Several shell companies. Money routed through South African and Czech bank accounts. Repeated transfers, consistent sums, all feeding into accounts under Lucian's real name, Lucas Neat. This one, Salgado said, tapping a page, was from 3 months after Ethan disappeared. Clara swallowed hard. This one, he tapped again, was last year. Same pattern. Lucian shows are the front. But the real transactions, they line up with tour stops. Every few months, different amounts. Payments in, payments out. The names on the transfers rotate. But the shell companies? All trace back to an account Maxim once controlled. Clara leaned over the table. They were partners. More than that. They were runners, Salgado said. Maxim lured them in. Lucian kept them hidden. Clara whispered. Like Ethan. Salgado looked her dead in the eyes. This isn't just about your brother anymore. There may be others. Kids who vanished off the grid. This whole operation could stretch back over a decade. Clara's head spun. How did they get away with it for so long? Because no one looked closely, he said. Because it's magic. Distraction. Smoke. The ones who came forward were ignored, threatened. Same as you. Clara pulled out her phone and showed him the message. His jaw clenched. That means they know you're close. Which means you are. She gripped the edge of the table to steady herself. I want to go back, she said. To the next show. Wherever they're headed next. I need to talk to him again. Ethan. Noah. Salgado hesitated. You sure? You may not get a third chance. I don't need a third. I need one moment of truth. He nodded slowly. I'll make a call, he said. I have a contact at DHS who's been sniffing around similar networks. Maybe now they'll listen. The theater in Des Moines was smaller, more intimate, but no less ornate. A swirl of gold leaf and deep maroon drapes wrapped the stage like a curtain of secrets. The marquee outside read, Lucian Knight, Master of Shadows. Fitting, Clara thought. Lies needed velvet. She moved like a phantom through the side corridor, the borrowed staff badge brushing against her hip. Samantha had printed another forged ID, this time for a lighting tech, named Marla Easton, and Clara had slipped into the backstage world like she belonged. She'd studied the layout. She knew Lucian's set routines. When he entered, when the stagehands cleared. Noah, always trailing behind, silent, unseen. She had 15 minutes at most. The backstage hall was dim, only emergency lights casting long shadows across crates and racks of costumes. Clara pressed her back to the wall as a stagehand passed by. When the footsteps faded, she moved again. Then she saw him. Noah. Alone, crouched beside a case of ropes, coiling them methodically. Head down. Hoodie up. A shadow inside a shadow. Clara stepped out. Noah, she whispered. He froze, hands stilling. She didn't move closer. Please. I just want to talk. Slowly, he turned his head. Their eyes met, and there was again that flicker. Recognition hidden behind walls built high and hard. I know who you are, Clara said, voice shaking. I know what they did to you. I know about Evan Myers. But that's not your name. He looked around nervously. You need to go. I can't, she said, stepping closer. I've looked for you for 11 years. I didn't stop. Everyone else said you were gone, but I... Stop, he said sharply, louder than before. His voice cracked on the word. She did. I don't know you. You do, she said gently. You used to say it every time we race cars in the driveway. Red trucks go fastest. He blinked hard, as if struggling to push something down or pull it back up. I'm not that kid, he muttered. Yes, Clara said, her voice softening, eyes misting. You are, and you don't have to say it out loud. I just need to know if you remember. He stood slowly, something clutched in his palm. Clara held her breath. He approached, cautious, hesitant. His hand trembled as he held something out. A card, torn diagonally, edges frayed. The Queen of Hearts. Clara's breath hitched. She remembered it from the old deck Ethan used to carry around. The one missing 2 cards he declared made the magic better. This was one of them. She took it with shaking fingers. I found this in my case last year, he said, voice low. Didn't know where it came from. His eyes were shining now, just slightly. But he looked away before she could say anything more. I'm being watched, he whispered. All the time. I'm going to get you out, Clara said. I swear. He stepped back. I can't talk more. He'll know. She tucked the card into her coat. nodding once. Then Lucien's voice echoed from deeper inside the hall. "No." The boy flinched. "I'm here," he called back, voice suddenly flat, controlled. One last look, fleeting, full of everything that couldn't be said, and then he turned and vanished into the wings of the stage. It was the kind of night that felt too calm. Rain tapped gently on the roof of the Davenport Civic Opera House as eager patrons lined up for Lucien Knight's final U.S. show before his extended European tour. Inside, the velvet seats filled one by one with families, couples, young aspiring magicians. No one suspected the trap hidden beneath the spotlight. Except Clara. She sat in row H, heart hammering against her ribs, one hand wrapped around the torn Queen of Hearts in her coat pocket. On the other side of the theater, Detective Salgado stood by a service exit, flanked by plainclothes DHS agents and local police. Every entry, every corridor had been secured. Lucien had no idea he was about to be exposed mid-illusion. Backstage, Noah moved props like always, expression impassive, but his fingers fidgeted with the laces of his black gloves. Clara had asked him for one thing. "If something goes wrong, just run toward me." Now it was time. The house lights dimmed. Lucien stepped into the spotlight. "Tonight," he began, voice rich with menace Clara now recognized, "I will attempt a disappearance that transcends space and time." The crowd applauded. Lucien gestured to the cabinet, a gleaming obsidian replica of the one from 11 years ago. "This box contains mystery, danger, and perhaps truth." Clara's eyes locked on Noah, who rolled the cabinet into place with measured grace. Salgado's voice crackled softly in her earpiece. "Units in position, awaiting the cue." Lucien circled the cabinet like a predator. "But beware, ladies and gentlemen, some illusions, once opened, cannot be undone." He opened the door. Noah stepped in. Lucien raised his hands to seal the trick. That was the cue. "Now," Salgado barked. The theater erupted. Agents flooded the aisles, shouting orders, flashing badges. Patrons screamed, scattering as Lucien froze mid-performance. But he wasn't unprepared. With a motion too fast to register, Lucien dropped a smoke pellet and slammed the cabinet shut. Thick black smoke filled the stage. Not the usual kind, but acrid, choking, blinding. The crowd panicked. Salgado cursed. "He's burning the exit." Flames licked up the curtains behind the wings. Clara pushed forward, coughing, shoving past seatbacks and dazed audience members. "Noah!" she screamed. She leapt onto the stage through the haze just as the cabinet burst open, and Noah stumbled out. Lucien was gone, but Noah saw her, eyes wide with fear, and something else. Resolve. "This way," he yelled, grabbing her hand. Together, they ran. The fire spread fast, devouring props, backdrops, decades of velvet. Clara's lungs screamed. Alarms blared. A wall of flame roared behind them as Noah led her through a narrow staff corridor. Down a stairwell. Through a loading dock. They burst out into cold night air behind the theater. Sirens. Flashing red and blue lights. Police everywhere. Clara collapsed to her knees, gasping, her hand still in his. Salgado found them moments later, coughing, waving off EMTs. His eyes scanned Noah like a man seeing a miracle. "We've got officers chasing Lucien through the alley grid," he said. "He won't get far." Noah stood still, trembling. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. Clara reached in her coat, held up the torn playing card. "You're here," she said. "That's what matters." He didn't speak, but his hand gripped hers tighter. Salgado looked between them. "We'll need a DNA test. Statements. Time. But it's him. It's got to be." The waiting room at St. Catherine's Behavioral Clinic was quiet, unnervingly so. The kind of silence Clara hadn't known since Ethan disappeared. Now, 11 years later, it had returned not as absence, but as a heavy presence, dense with questions, memories, and things that could never be fully repaired. A nurse called her name. "Miss Carter? You can see him now." Clara stood slowly, fingers knotted together, breath shallow. The test results had come in that morning. 99.96% match. The DNA didn't lie. No ever was Ethan Carter. But the truth was never just in blood. She stepped into the room. He sat by the window, pale sunlight catching the soft edge of his cheekbone. He looked older now, not just in years, but in ways Clara could feel. He didn't turn when she walked in, just kept staring out over the hospital garden. "I remember the truck," he said softly. "The red one. You gave it to me for Christmas." Said it was faster than the rest. Clara's throat tightened. She pulled up a chair, but didn't sit yet. "I didn't think I'd ever hear you say that again," she whispered. Ethan turned slowly. His eyes were the same, but not. Distant. Wounded. "They call me Evan," he said. "From the beginning. Said Ethan was a bad dream. Said forgetting was the only way to get better." Clara sat, tears already blurring her vision. "Do you remember what happened?" she asked. He shook his head. "Bits and pieces. A stage. The cabinet. After that, it's shadows. Rooms with no windows. One day became the next. But they never let me feel time. Just learn. Obey." Silence settled between them like dust. "They made me perform," he said, anger threading his voice. "Said I was lucky, that I had a purpose, that I was chosen." Clara reached out, but he flinched, just slightly, enough to make her heart crack in places she thought were already broken. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I didn't find you in time." He looked at her, really looked. "You were 14, he said. "I was 6. It wasn't your job to save me. But it was," she whispered. "I was the one who told you to sit up front. I told you it was just a show." Ethan didn't respond right away. Then, quietly, "You kept looking, didn't you?" She nodded. "Then that's what matters." They sat together in the stillness of the room, the garden swaying behind the window like the world was trying to remember how to breathe again. "There's going to be trials," Clara said. "Lucian's facing federal charges. Interpol's involved now. Other kids are being found. Some of them don't even remember who they were." Ethan's face twisted slightly, not into a frown, but something softer. "It's strange, being a person again. You never stopped being one." He closed his eyes for a long moment. "I don't know who I'm supposed to be now." Clara reached in her bag, pulled out the battered Queen of Hearts, and slid it across the table. "You don't have to know today," she said. "We'll figure it out, piece by piece." He picked it up, turned it in his fingers like it was something fragile and sacred. Clara watched him, her brother, fractured but not lost, and knew some wounds never closed. So didn't need to. Healing wasn't about going back. It was about going forward, broken and beautiful. The world wanted a story. As soon as the news broke, the headlines multiplied like wildfire. "Boy lost in magic trick found after 11 years, alive." "Lucian Knight arrested in child abduction ring." "Mystery assistant identified as Ethan Carter, missing since age 6." TV vans lined the sidewalks outside the clinic. Clara's inbox was flooded with interview requests, morning shows, crime podcasts, even a documentary team from Netflix offering a 6-figure deal. She deleted them all. "This isn't a story," she told Samantha as they watched the news crawl past their TV screen. "It's his life. It's not for sale." Samantha only nodded, passing her a bowl of soup without saying more. Her loyalty had never needed words. Clara turned the screen off and looked at the couch where Ethan lay wrapped in a blanket. He had barely left the apartment since his release. Doctors said it would take time, months, maybe years, to unravel the damage, to separate truth from the narratives Lucian had stitched into him. Every so often, he'd ask things that shattered her. "Was I good before? Did you miss me? Am I supposed to remember everything? Or nothing? And the worst, why did he pick me?" Claire never had answers, but she was learning that sometimes presence was more powerful than clarity. She cooked for him, sat with him, brought him puzzle books, toy trucks, and photos from their childhood. At first, they didn't seem to register. They stood in silence before the chain-link fence, watching the skeletal remains of the Darnell Falls Community Center crumble under the gray mid-morning sky. The building, long condemned, was now half demolished, a jagged wound of bricks and rusted steel girders. Nature had begun reclaiming the lot. Tall weeds sprouted through the concrete, and a single sapling stood defiantly near the old entrance. Clara gripped the cold fence, her breath shallow. Ethan stood beside her, hands in his hoodie pockets, hood up despite the warmth. He'd said little during the 2-hour drive from Chicago. The town was foreign to him now. But the moment they turned onto Sycamore Avenue, something had shifted in his posture, a stillness, as though listening for echoes. "This is where it happened," Clara said. Not a question, a statement. Ethan didn't speak at first. His eyes scanned what remained of the stage area, now just exposed foundation and broken tile. He took a step forward and ducked through a hole in the fence. Clara hesitated, then followed. Inside, silence wrapped around them like an old, brittle blanket. "I remember the smell," Ethan murmured. "Popcorn and dust. I thought magic would smell like something sweeter." Clara smiled faintly. He walked toward a cracked slab of stage, crouching by what used to be center front. From her bag, Clara pulled out a small object, chipped paint, cracked plastic wheels. The red toy truck. He took it in both hands, turned it slowly, pressed his thumb into the worn hood. His eyes softened. "I don't know if I'm the same person anymore," he said. "You're not," Clara answered. "Neither am I." He nodded. There was no need to pretend otherwise. "What happens now?" he asked. "We build something new," she said, kneeling beside him. "Together. Not instead of the past, but with it." He placed the truck gently on the broken stage, right where the cabinet had once stood. No words, just reverence, like laying down a memory, or a ghost. A breeze passed through, rustling the weeds, stirring something invisible. Clara closed her eyes for a moment. It didn't bring closure, but brought space. They stayed like that for a while, two survivors in the ruins of a moment that had shaped their lives. When they stood and turned to leave, Ethan looked back once more. "I used to think magic was about disappearing," he said quietly. "But maybe it's about coming back." Clara smiled. "Some illusions trap you," she said, taking his hand. They passed through the fence together, stepping into the new light of afternoon. "Others set you free."